Today we are discussing the impact of climate change on small island developing states. Why in news? At the UNFCCC COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, a new loss and damage fund was created to help climate vulnerable nations, particularly small island developing states. Despite the agreement, wealthier nations, the largest carbon emitters, have failed to fulfill their financial commitments, leaving many vulnerable countries without the necessary support. Friends, please subscribe to this channel before we analyze this news and concept. First, we will know about small island developing states. Small island developing states refer to a group of small island nations and territories that face shared challenges in sustainable development alongside significant social, economic, and environmental vulnerabilities. Some of these SIDS include the Maldives, Seychelles, Marshall Islands, Solomon Islands, Suriname, Mauritius, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Guyana, and Singapore. SIDS are primarily located in three major geographical regions: the Caribbean, the Pacific, and the Atlantic, Indian Ocean and South China Sea regions. At the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in 1992, SIDS were formally recognized as a special case due to their unique environmental and developmental challenges. Now, we will know how climate change is affecting small island developing states, or SIDS. Increased vulnerability of SIDS. Small island developing states suffer 3 to 5 times more climate-related losses relative to government revenues compared to other countries. Even wealthier SIDS, like Barbados and the Bahamas, face 4 times more loss than other high-income nations. Projected losses from extreme weather will reach $75 billion annually by 2050 for SIDS under a 2 degrees Celsius warming scenario. Direct impacts. Climate change-induced extreme weather events cause significant damage to homes, infrastructure, and public services, as well as loss of life. For instance, Cyclone Winston in 2016 caused extensive flooding in Fiji, resulting in the loss of 44 lives and significant economic disruptions. Indirect impacts. Recovery costs and diverted resources lead to slow economic recovery, with sectors like tourism and agriculture severely impacted. Economic growth is delayed or reversed, with increased recovery expenses and reduced income generation. For example, Fiji's GDP growth was reduced by 1.4% due to the 2016 cyclone. Small island states face prolonged fiscal difficulties as recovery costs exacerbate national debt. Dominica's recovery from Hurricane Maria has left it with a 150% debt-to-GDP ratio. Cost of climate change. USD 141 billion in direct and indirect impacts on small island developing states from 2000 to 2020, averaging USD 2,000 per person. However, some countries face even higher per capita costs. For example, Dominica lost USD 20,000 per person after Hurricane Maria. 38% of the total losses are attributable to climate change, according to extreme event attribution studies. What are major initiatives taken to mitigate impact on small island developing states? The Alliance of Small Island States, or AOSIS, is an intergovernmental organization that advocates for small island nations and influences international climate policy. The Barbados Program of Action, established at the UN Global Conference on the Sustainable Development of SIDS, held in Barbados in 1994, addresses the specific vulnerabilities of SIDS to climate change, sea level rise, and climate variability. The Small Island Developing States Accelerated Modalities of Action, or Samoa Pathway, adopted in 2014 at the 3rd International Conference on Small Island Developing States, aims to address the unique challenges faced by SIDS, supporting their development through international cooperation and climate action. The Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, or CDRI, is a global partnership launched in 2019 under the leadership of the Government of India and with the support of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction to boost infrastructure resilience to climate and disaster risks, promoting sustainable development. The Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund, or IRF, founded with the backing of UNDP and UNDRR, with a particular emphasis on developing countries and SIDS, supports disaster resilience, focusing on developing countries and SIDS with a fund of USD 50 million. Overall, India has committed a total of $70 million in project aid, along with $350 million in concessional loans and credit lines to SIDS, while these nations have made significant efforts towards sustainable development, especially in combating climate change. Why do developed countries need to pay up? Wealthy, industrialized nations, which are the largest historical carbon emitters, bear the primary responsibility for financing climate change mitigation and adaptation in vulnerable countries. Current financial pledges are not sufficient to address the scale of loss and damage already occurring, let alone prepare for future impacts. The Loss and Damage Fund needs billions more annually, especially for the most vulnerable countries like SIDS. Given the severity of impacts, the fund should be designed with the ambition and scale of a modern Marshall Plan, ensuring that affected nations have adequate resources to recover and adapt. SIDS are responsible for less than 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions, but are among the most affected by climate change impacts. As climate impacts become more severe and frequent, future climate finance targets need to be sufficiently ambitious to match the scale of challenges SIDS face. Indirect economic losses due to extreme weather events may have totaled $107 billion from 2000 to 2022, with 36% attributable to climate change. The Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, or FRLD, which aims to provide financial support to vulnerable nations, particularly SIDS and developing countries, to address climate change impacts like loss, damage and recovery, should also address these indirect losses and ensure rapid recovery for vulnerable economies. Conclusion. The creation of the Loss and Damage Fund at UNFCCC COP27 marks a critical step in supporting SIDS. However, wealthy nations must fulfill their financial commitments to provide adequate resources for climate resilience, addressing both direct and indirect impacts of climate change on these vulnerable nations, ensuring their sustainable development. If you like this video information, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching this video. Jai Hind.